So, Soumya, you have a master's in social work and you went on to become a development professional, right? And I know that you've worked throughout the course of your professional journey in some very challenging work environments, right? Very unconventional work environments, even the kind of work that you've done. So, how did your family react to that?
Okay. So, I think if you ask anyone in my family what I really do, there is still going to be a lot of ambiguity about it. I don't think anyone actually truly understands what I do. I even now when I go back to my hometown and when I meet my relatives, some of them ask me questions like, maybe you should counsel my children, or maybe we should ask Soumya what to do about this stuff, because she does counseling. The fact that I did medical and psychiatric social work as my course itself makes them think that I'm a counselor, which absolutely is not what I do. I have not really touched the book of psychology since the time I have stopped my social work studies. So some people think I do that. The other set of people actually, I think they just think I do some charity. I give away stuff, or I do something just voluntarily. Very few people may even know that it's a profession, and there are a lot of challenges associated with the profession. I go to work like a regular professional. I have to do my reports. I have to still strategize stuff. I have to still plan my work. I have to there are so many aspects to my work. That's not something which a lot of people would know. I don't blame them in some ways, because I think the stereotypical role women play in the professional sphere in our country is just too limited, right? You will have, what a lawyer does, or you would know that what would you do as a doctor? You would know what an engineer's professional career path looks like. You would know what management professional's career path would look like. You either earn a lot of money, or at least you would keep getting promoted and you will become a deputy manager, then you will become general manager, then you will become a CEO, whatever. There is a path to it, which is very promising to see as well. There is something which you can see, very tangible. But in my profession, being a development professional, that is it's not hand in hand always. I may be a very successful professional, I may be very good at my work, but at the same time it may not come with a lot of money. I mean, it does not come with a lot of money, right? And it does not come with the usual way of career growth. You don't really get promoted in a certain definite path. So it's very difficult to explain what I'm doing currently and what I would be doing tomorrow, what my career path would look like. And I think that's the reason why a lot of people get so confused about what I do. And I, over a period of time, I think I've stopped explaining a lot of it. I just say, okay, I work here and I'm just a social worker. That's much easier than to explain a lot of stuff.
And how does that go down with your family? Do they also find it difficult to explain to others, and so do you have to struggle with it, negotiating that with your family in terms of, this is what you want to do, this is what is, it's good. But obviously, like you said, they don't get it. So how does that work?
So honestly, I sometimes feel really bad for them, because I know that, as parents, as people living in a very conventional society with a very conventional model of professional roles around them, they find it very difficult to explain what their daughter does, and especially what their daughter does, because it's not very easy to say that she is working in a red light area, or she is working with commercial sex workers, or it's very difficult to say that she's going and rescuing victims of trafficking. How do you explain that? How do you connect it to a job? How do you connect it to a profession? How do you connect it to them being proud about the fact that I'm successful? Or it's very difficult for them to, I think, have those conversations. And so that kind of reflects on me as well, because I think I've never really felt that they are very proud of what I do, because I think they would have been much happier if I was an engineer, working in an Infosys or an IBM, or today I would have had a lot of money. I would have been in a great position. I have worked in the development profession for over 12 years, and I cannot say that I am in that position where my parents want me to be today. And that is something which I have to I had to come to terms with the fact that it's okay, because I followed my passion, and it was very expected. I knew what to expect in my profession. I knew this is going to be my life, but I think I never quite gave it much thought when it came to what am I supposed to do with my family or people surrounding me, or how do I negotiate with them on these terms, right? So that is something which I still find very, very challenging. I can't really explain to them quite a lot of times that it's okay, you can talk to people about this. One thing they really see sometimes is that I do a lot of talks, so they'll be like, okay, she's talking in a certain space, or she's done this session for somebody. I think those are things they can actually project and portray to people, but at the same time, it's not done in then with a lot of enthusiasm, I might say.
And does that affect you as well? Because I know that you've worked in like a very remote area of Bihar, right? And so again, like you said, it's not what you would want, a space that you would want a woman to be in, right? And for their daughter to be in, and not just your immediate family, but say a partner's family for that matter. How do you sort of explain to them that you're safe? How do you pacify them? And so how does that play out for you in your professional journey as well?
So, a couple of years back, I was working in Bihar. I used to work in the border district of Nepal. Basically, it's border to Nepal. It's called Araria. And I was working with this group of denotified tribes who are into caste-based prostitution, and my organization, we were working against human trafficking. So very challenging role, like you said. I was the only woman in the whole of the organization. I mean, there were outreach workers who were working in the communities, but I was the only person in the office when I moved to Bihar. I still remember my first day in Bihar. I landed in Bagdogra. I was, there was a car waiting for me. I came to Forbesganj, and I was all alone, and I had no idea of this place. And people had a lot of image of Bihar, so I also had my preconceived notions about that state and how people would be. I was scared. I didn't know if I was making the right decision, but I knew I wanted to do something. And I think every day when I worked there for the first few months, it was very difficult for me to even imagine how my life would look like there. It's like it's like a decade back from the society where I'm coming from, when I was in Bihar. As in, you would not find the latest movies released. There are no malls, there are no entertainment zones. You just are living in a town, and there are villages around you, and that's it. You're just stuck in that. It's like you're stuck back in time somewhere. Plus the challenges of the job which I was doing, and I don't think I spoke to my parents, or even I was married at that point of time, to my husband about how scared I was, because as soon as you say that I'm scared and I don't know how to deal with stuff, the immediate response is that, why don't you come back? You don't have to be there. So to avoid a situation like that where I have to negotiate to stay back there, what I would do is I would stay strong, and I would say that it's absolutely amazing working here, and it's really great, and but it was not the fact. People hated me when I reached there because I was an outsider, and I had to work through my work and through different negotiations which I had to do with people around me there to accept me as part of the system over there. But when it happened, it was amazing. It was perfect. And I still remember this one. The most important moment of my life in Bihar was this one rescue operation which happened in Bihar, and this was it's called a running mela which happens in Bihar. I think even today it happens. It's not banned even now. But there's a running mela, and there are these theater groups. They call it theater groups, but there are girls in these groups who are asked to perform in front of the audience, right? And there are minors in that group. There are young adults in the group, and they are being asked to perform in a very seductive way. Yeah, in a very seductive way. And that was still okay if that was just a performance, but the fact that we heard that there was forced prostitution going on behind this racket was something which kind of stuck me for a long time. And when this started happening in Forbesganj, in that year when that Mela came into Forbesganj, I kind of decided that we should somehow have a look into this. And I remember me and one of my other colleague, I requested him, I begged him to kind of get us into this space, because it's not very safe to go in, and they don't allow girls in, especially an outsider in, and stuff like that. So me and my colleague, and there was one intern from a different country. So we just said that we were just studying the art form, and we were just studying the Mela, and we had to lie our way in. And we went in, we got some information, and we spoke to the girls over there, and we realized that it was in fact true. There was forced prostitution going in there, and I saw there were minor girls in there. So it was very clear to us what was happening. And we had to then I had to come back to my organization. I had to negotiate with them that we should do something about it. And definitely the organization was very supportive. And then they were like, okay, you can definitely go ahead and do something about it. And we have to inform the administration. We have to inform the DM. We have to inform the SP, and we'll do as per the protocols. So the whole process happened, and but it didn't go as per what we planned. The SP of this particular district who was posted there was quite, he didn't really follow the protocols as such, and he didn't inform us, and he took all the information from us, and he just went in and did the whole rescue. The good thing out of it was that there were a lot of minor girls, which was the red light area, which was close to this Mela, had a lot of minor girls in there who were rescued at that point of time. The bad thing which happened was it was not done as per protocol of the rescue and rehabilitation process, the SOPs were not followed. However, the reason I'm bringing this up is that whole time over there, right? I was working with a community which was very dangerous in terms of they do not like outsiders, but I had to earn their trust, and I had to build rapport with them, and I had gained that after 2 years. And after that, this happened, which means that the whole community was against me and my organization at that point of time, and I was living right there alone, right? And at the same time, the administration was not supportive because they had turned against us. So there was this whole conflict going on between the administration and the organization, and the community and the organization. And I was like the face to all of this, which meant that I was always scared to even step out of my house, because it could be a community member who would find me, and we don't know what would happen at that point of time, because they're angry, right? And it could be an administration person who was trying to just trap us in. One of my colleagues was framed in a wrong charges and was arrested at that point of time. And I actually left Bihar for a couple of weeks, and I came to Bangalore to meet some of my friends, and then I went to Kerala and stayed 2 weeks in Kerala and came back. But that vacation was not planned. That vacation was planned only because this situation happened and I wanted to stay out of that situation. But I couldn't talk about this to anybody. I couldn't say that, this is what's happening. and what do I say? Hi mom, I may go to jail, but don't worry about it. It's not easy to have these conversations. But does that mean that I did not have my fears? Does that mean that I was so strong that I did not need anyone around me? No, I needed family support. I needed support from my friends. I needed support from my partner as much as any woman in her workplace would have needed.
Even more,
Even
in
more.
fact.
Yeah, even more for that matter at that point of time. But I could not go for help. I could not go for help because it would have been considered that I told you so. Why did you go into a scenario like that? It was something you created. It is not something you had to do, but you did it. I mean, what's wrong with you? So it was not, it would not have, I may be wrong. Maybe if I had gone, the situation would have been different. I probably had, if I had sought support, maybe I would have gotten it. But the fact that I could not is because I was not in a very conventional professional space where I could say that my the things in my office is not working out. There's so much politics happening, and therefore I may not get promotion. It's not about that. I'm talking about there is a angry community out there who may just have threatened me to do something to me, or I've got rape threats. I've got death threats, and on the other side, I'm also talking about a police force which is angry at us and could have done something, could have framed me for something or something of that sort. But the fact that all this kind of made me only stronger is what is amazing here. It's very strange that I do need support. I would have needed a lot of support at that point of time, and I know that I was dealing with personal issues at that point of time. I was dealing with a lot of lack of support from my family, and the fact that I felt alone a lot of times. I needed companionship. I needed the warmth of a relationship. I needed, everything which a woman would need at that point of time. But I did not get it because of the choices I have made. Is what kind of did not sit very well with me. That is what kind of made me feel a little sad at that point of time. But I think, having said which, I think there are women who have to come out of the stereotypical professional roles and have to go through this probably to break out of these conventional models of workspaces for women, right? Otherwise, we all will always be stuck in that boundaries which we are always expected to be in. So, do I regret it? No. Do I regret the fact that I had to constantly hide what I'm doing at work to my family? Yes. But I don't regret the fact that I did this or I am in this profession. In fact, I don't know who I would be if I'm not in this profession. So that's what I think.
Yeah, and even the fact that, like you said, being in the non-profit sector, right, being in the development space comes with a unique set of challenges. So when we talk about like workplace systems, when we talk about workplace policies for mental health, they're very straightforward. They're like, we'll do, counseling, say one-on-one counseling for, certain life transitions that employees are going through, so they should have access to these sort of support systems for their mental health and well-being. But at the same time, when you're in a challenging work environment like this, it's not as direct, the mental health support I'm hearing you say, right, that can be provided to employees, but it has to be more even as basic as just physical security.
Yes,
becomes a part of your mental health plan.
Yes, physical security is so much part of the mental health plan for a woman, because at the end of the day, we are working in challenging work environment, and yes, we are working on issues which could be very, very daring, if I may say, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be safe. Just the fact that we have that safety provided by our organizations itself would make us feel much more productive. I don't have to constantly be worried about it. But if I seem worried, I'm always scared that I may not be, they may not consider me fit for this role. And therefore I hide my fears, I hide my insecurities in a lot of ways, because I don't want them to think that I'm weak because I'm a woman. Like I said, I was the only woman in that space, and I was respected for that. And I that is also there. I was respected for the fact that I was an outsider. I was staying in Bihar. I was working in a space where there were all men. Me and my colleague, we could create this work environment in that office, and that was created just by us when we were working over there. And we were very proud of that. Because I was the strong figure over there, I could not ever show my weakness. It's probably easy for a man to show their weakness at workplace, but for a woman to show weakness is much harder. But then it just becomes very that stereotypical talks about, no, this is exactly why I said that you should not have hired a woman for this role, and I never wanted that. So then you have to put a facade of being much stronger than you are, which also affects you mentally, which is very tiring, which is very exhausting at the end of the day. You want to go back home and just, I don't know, just sleep off, because you're just too exhausted, you're emotionally drained. And to note here that it's not that I'm only living one life, right? It's not just my profession which I'm dealing with. I'm also dealing with a very difficult marriage. I'm also dealing with the fact that my family's support is not there at that point of time. So there is also that. But I'm keeping those and I'm compartmentalizing because I have to. That is what is challenging for a woman, I guess, working in a scenario like that. And that is where organizations need to be much more proactive about providing safer, providing more conducive environment for women, where their mental health, their issues are part of conversations in the organization, not tucked away somewhere, thinking that these conversations are very dangerous to be spoken in an organization because it may just lead to women being lazy or something of that sort. It's not that. It's just that they need that. They need that extra support. That doesn't make them weak. That just makes it more productive for an organization and more efficient as an organization.
Especially because it's so social, right? The fact that, like you said, it gets attributed to gender, right? Because you're a woman, you cannot be in a challenging work environment. And so to reverse that and to say that you need to, as a workplace, factor in the fact that there are certain socio-cultural limitations that also women have to struggle with, or certain socio-cultural barriers that women have to struggle with. So to really create policies and to create environments that factor that in instead of restricting women from entering, say, a challenging work environment.
Yeah. So that's what. So there need to be more policies rather than restricting women to say that this is not your place because you have these challenges. That is not the right conversation. The conversation is that how can we make it more easier for a woman also to participate. It's not about giving them any special favor. It's about creating equal opportunity for both women and men to work in a space where they both want to work in. It's not that I don't want to work in a challenging environment. It's just that it's too difficult. How much am I going to fight? I'm fighting my family, I'm fighting my relationship, I'm fighting the social presumption of people of what I should be, and I'm fighting the whole organization's expectations of what my role should look like. So it would be much easier if I have to have lesser fights than have to do multiple fights at the same time, I guess. Also, I think it is very important for workplaces to be empathetic towards employees who go through mental health issues, and we need to have organizations who actually talk about it very openly. I'll tell you the reason why I bring this up today is because I was battling depression for 3 years and I was going through therapy, I was on medication, but like people think it's not difficult to manage depression and also go through your work life, and you can manage both and you can continue doing both, but you just need to have enough of support from your family, from your workspaces. But specifically when you talk about workspace, I can tell you that it makes a very positive impact on people when they go through mental health issues and you have a supportive work environment. I was in an organization where our whole work revolved around, you know, rescuing victims of human trafficking, and we had rescue operations. Then we had a lot of legal formalities going through with it. So our work demanded us to be agile and focused throughout the day. We actually never had a break. We could not switch off. And I was heading this chapter of a chapter which was actually dealing with the rehabilitation process of victim. So the work started with the operations where you go to a rescue operation, even before that the planning of the operation, to the conclusion, right, where the victim is completely rehabilitated. It's a long process. So, and you have multiple victims and you are dealing with many people at the same time. You do have a team to manage it, but it still needs a lot of focused work. Now in a workspace like that, while you are already battling with depression, sometimes you cannot manage both. You may want to pull yourself up every day and you want to come to work every day and you want to do your best, but at the same time it's emotionally very taxing, and a lot of days are not very good for yourself, right? So there was this one instance where I was going through a really bad phase, and there was this ops planned, and I was supposed to be the in charge for the victim rehabilitation bit of it. Now I knew that I could not be my 100% on that particular day. I could not give myself emotionally that day to a person who would already be talking about her or his trauma, right? So my professional ethics told me that I should back off from that role, from that on that particular day, and give someone else a responsibility who could do it the best. And that is what I thought was the best thing to do, and I still believe that is the best thing to do. If you cannot be there fully, you just don't be there. You back off and, you know, reconserve your energy, come back again. So that's what I did. But that particular incident kind of backlashed on me professionally. It did not go down well with the organization because it was considered as something where I was weak for a day, or considered weak in my work performance, right? So even though the organization was very well aware, and this was something which I had very openly told the organization that I had to go for therapy. So I used to go for therapy during my work hours. So it was very open. I've never hidden the fact that I was going through this. So it was a very open conversation between me and my organization, and I thought that was a supportive environment where I could talk about it. But it kind of backlashed, and that's when I realized that it is actually still stigmatized. The concept of mental health issue in an employee and having to take breaks from workspace is still not considered positive. But at the same time, I joined another organization and I was still going through therapy. Right? I was still battling depression, and that organization where I'm currently working, it was so supportive of the whole process. I still went for my therapies during my work hours, and I felt better. I have not gone for therapy for the last 5 years now. I have been okay. I have not been taking medication. So I'm not saying that was the only factor. I did have a very supportive partner, a very supportive friend circle who also helped me through it. But the work environment made such a huge difference, where I could actually talk about my mental health issue and still not be judged based on that for my performance or for my professional deliverables. That's the reason why mental health issues need to be spoken out more openly, and we need to have conversations around it. You know, it's not that the organization I worked with did not have a counseling support system in the organization itself. It's just that I was clinically depressed and I needed a specialized care, and that was not being provided by the organization, and not something which is always, that's why I said that it's not, sometimes it's a generalized care you need, it may be a very specific care you need, and that may not be always available for you in the organization. Having said which, we are not talking about only the counseling support in the organization. It's also about the systems and processes in place for an employee to have open conversations about it, and also especially because we are working with victims who have gone through violence, and victims who have gone through difficult situations, and they have their own journey of emotional trauma and conversations they need to have. We have to be much more agile and focused about it. And for that, for us to sustain such an environment, we need much more than just a counseling support. And we need to have an environment where we can also talk about our own conflicts, our own insecurities, and our own vulnerabilities which we face as a person, as an individual, and as a professional sometimes. To just kind of give more perspective to it, when I started I talked about my experience in Bihar, right? When I started my work in Bihar, I was going through a difficult marriage, and there was abuse involved in the marriage, and I was working with a set of women from a community where violence was part of their everyday life. So I was out there talking about how they should say no to violence, how they should say no to abuse, how they should actually stand up for their rights, how they should not tolerate any sorts of violence from anyone, or any sorts of manipulation by anyone. But at the same time, me, who was actually their role model for that matter, if you can put it that way, I was going through the same thing in my personal life, right? I was not standing up for myself, or I was not even having a conversation about about the fact that it was not easy for me to deal with it. So there was a lot of conflict within me about myself, about my identity as a professional, about who I was, because this profession was not just a profession for me, it was a way of life. Now, if I can't be one person in my professional space, and I can't be another person in my personal life, I have to be the same person. I need to, walk the talk, right? So, therefore, when I was, it was during that time that I talked about, breaking off my relationship. And I remember having those conversations with my family, with my friends, with, mutual friends, and all of them. The perception I got from them was that since you're not invested in your personal life as much as you should be, is why you are going through a break in your relationship. The conversation about how I dealt with my identity here was never discussed, whether in my personal space or in my professional space. And I think it was my colleagues, or some of my chosen colleagues who were my friends, who I spoke to at that point of time, and they helped me through the situation. But I feel that if the organization themselves, while we are dealing with all these very complicated scenarios out there in the communities, out there with women and girls who are subject to violence, and we are working with them, we should be able to talk about our own vulnerabilities over there in the organization as well. Then there should be a system in place for that. It should not be judged. I was always worried that if I talk about my personal issue, that I have this issue of violence in my marriage, I may be considered as someone who is weak and not standing up for myself. Rather than, the fact that I'm an individual and I'm going through conflict, because it's not as easy and as black and white as it seems, right? And I need time, and I need mind space to go through this whole process myself, and I need to realize it. That conversation never happened, and it's not that we may have these conversations even today in organizations, and I'm not saying that it should turn around and change, and we need to have conversations about our personal lives in our organizations, but there should be some system in place where we can reflect about ourselves, so that, because our self is not very different from our professional roles which we play in a social impact organization. It's very much connected. Therefore, it is very important to have this reflection of self-identity, self-esteem, respect, all of that, where we can actually navigate ourselves in a positive direction rather than stuck in a kind of limbo over there.
Yeah, like you said, I think that a lot of times self-inquiry as a process becomes so important when you're doing social impact work, right? Because there are so many experiences that we bring to the community as well when we're working with the community, and so there are so many spaces that can act as triggers for
Yes.
you as an individual. And so how does an organization sort of help an employee work through those experiences, understand the scope of work and the impact it can have on them, right? So maybe processes like having support groups within the organization, especially for a social impact organization, would become so important.
It is very important, and also I think as a culture, like I talked about the organization I'm currently working in, the culture of the organization is such that the empathy in people is very naturally imbibed. It's part of the organization's culture to be sympathetic, to be empathetic, to be understanding of each other. You are not judged based on the fact that you are going through a bad phase. You are not judged based on the fact that having difficult conversation is bad. I think that space need to be there. It's not more than the system and process. I think it's the organization's culture which needs to change, and which for women especially, right? They go through they play such multiple roles, and they have so much nuances in their lives, and such complicated nuances. It may not be as simple as you are a wife or a mother, or you could be a girlfriend, you could be somebody who is in a homosexual relationship, you could be somebody who is in an unconventional relationship, you could be somebody who is going through a breakup. These are not part, if that is not understood, if those issues are not part of the organization's culture, where you're understanding of these scenarios, it's much more difficult to work in a social impact organization, because we are basically projecting ourselves to the community as a very different person. We have to be positive, we have to be very we project a very positive self of ourselves to the people who are out there, because we want them to be we want them to raise up, and we want them to rise up and stand up for themselves, for their rights or whatever. So so for that we need to have that kind of an environment, is what I believe. Also, I think in social impact organizations, or in development profession as such, right, we have a different image. We try to portray a kind of image to other communities we work with. We work with communities who are marginalized, who are going through a difficult scenario. So I think it's very unsaid, and it's set as a precedent in people that we shouldn't show our weaknesses to them, and therefore we need to have a certain self which may not be always realistic, which we always portray to people. Therefore, it becomes important for conversations on self-inquiry, which happens in organizations, and there are protocols set in place where people reflect about themselves and their vulnerabilities, and these conversations on what is appropriate, what are the biases which comes along with it, what are the things we should look forward to, or the things which are just biases, which are not really true. And we don't have to adhere to certain way in which we actually tend to exhaust ourselves in so many scenarios, because that becomes very exhausting. That becomes much more difficult for us to sustain in a day-to-day life or work life. Yeah, to summarize, when it comes to women and mental health, and especially women who are working in the social sector, organizations can be a very great support system for them. And they can actually, especially when you try to factor in the fact that they come already with a lot of social perception and social stigma attached to the profession as such. And the fact that sometimes the organizations themselves, there's a lot of gender lens creeping in, and with a lot of roles and responsibilities which you think can only be done by men in so many spaces, especially with challenging work roles, right? So to kind of be cognizant about that in a workplace. The other thing which I can think about is, there is no set trajectory or career growth path in a lot of organizations in the social sector. When it comes to promotions, increments, growth, these are not very set and defined for a lot of people in the social sector. And hence, how is it that organizations can help compensate that? How is it that organizations can help the employees feel good about the fact that they are doing something really, really special, or something they love to do. The other aspect is the fact that organizations need to have systems and policies in place for women, especially, to talk about their own vulnerabilities, to have conversations on self-inquiry and self-identity, and a lot of things which they feel are very important and challenging in their day-to-day work life, because of the kind of spaces they work with, the kind of communities they work with, since they have to absorb a lot of emotions from their the target group they work with. How is it that organizations can help navigate them through these processes? And because there is a concept, I feel, that exists in people, in common people, and even in organizations, that people who work in social sector are kind of superheroes and they have to portray a certain image. So how is it that we can actually come out of those biases and can set a realistic targets for people to work in these spaces, and can help them work efficiently and productively, considering their own mental health, having their own mental health kept in check, and for them to also live a happy and healthy life.